Welcome to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello, and welcome back to The Kitchen Table. I'm so glad you're here. I'm your host, Alicia Brown, an anti-diet registered dietitian nutritionist. And today, I'm very excited. We have Emily Murray here on the show. She is a non-diet registered dietitian that works with those with eating disorders. She's also a health at every size dietitian, and that's the topic that we're going to dive into today. What exactly is health at every size? So Emily, she promotes such inspiring and powerful messages on Instagram as she does advocacy work for those suffering and recovering from eating disorders. And that's her work too, as she works with those that struggle with their relationship with food. And so Emily, thank you so much for being here and being willing and open to talk about health at every size. This is a conversation that really piques the curiosity of many people because we're taught in our culture that healthy means to be thin. And when we're thin, we are perceived as healthier. And so that's why the quest is for thinness. But health at every size, at its core, really combats that message. So I'm excited to dive into that with you. But before we get started, can you kind of explain how you got into this role of being a non-diet dietitian, working with those that struggle with their relationship with food?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. This is so fun. And I love talking about, health at every size and eating disorders and my journey and all of that stuff. Yeah. So I went to school at Tennessee Tech. So it's just a local Tennessee state college type of thing. And I was studying psychology. And then I kind of got some bad advice from some people, but I was basically told that I couldn't really do anything with psychology unless I became a doctor. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I switched over to nutrition. I was like, yeah, nutrition sounds cool and fun and whatever. And so I started on that path, but I was very not how I am now. I was very weight centric and focused on like dieting and eating clean and, just all this stuff that really I'm not doing a whole lot of that now. And in that process, I also in high school, I was diagnosed with IBS. And so I kind of had my own journey of trying to figure out what foods to eat and why I should eat them and when I should eat them and blah, 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 blah. And that can all, be fine and good for some people. But my IBS was really strongly correlated with my anxiety and really some OCD. And I didn't realize that. And so as I was on my journey, my quest to becoming a dietitian, I absolutely had some disordered eating, and I actually, it ended up kind of turning into an eating disorder. And so that all kind of didn't come to a halt, but kind of. I was like, what am I even doing? I don't even know how to eat. And so I started working with a really, really amazing dietitian and therapist. Within months of starting that journey, I thought, this is what I want to do. Like, this is the type of nutrition that people need to know about. And so that really sparked my journey to continue on that path of a more non-diet, health at every size approach. I knew I wanted to treat eating disorders. So I did my dietetic internship at Vanderbilt, and I worked on the adolescent medicine unit, inpatient for eating disorders. And then they have an outpatient clinic that I worked at. And then I spent some time at a local outpatient clinic and then the Renfrew Center. They do partial hospitalization and IOP programs. And then I started my own practice. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. My smile is just like from ear to ear because I'm just like filled with resonance. Our stories are very much the same in many ways. Your diagnosis of IBS was my diagnosis of celiac disease, spun kind of into some disordered eating, meshed with kind of like anxiety, OCD, mental stuff going on too. And that kind of just spiraling and then ultimately finding, oh my gosh, like this relief in intuitive eating and health at every size, and then deciding that that's what we wanted to share. I'm just like, oh yes, Emily, me too, So I'm so inspired by you in that way. And by your experience at Vanderbilt and kind of seeing how your career is really unfolded is also really inspiring too. So thanks for sharing that as well. When you first heard of health at every size, like what was your first kind of thought or feeling about health at every size, kind of coming from this prior mindset from, nutrition school and diet culture, maybe, when you were starting to work at, initially with more this clean eating mentality and weight centric information. How did you first land upon health at every size and how did it feel for you?
Yeah. So I think I first barely briefly heard of health at every size, maybe in my undergrad, but I didn't really know what it meant. And so I heard that and I was pretty disordered and had a lot of my own, weight bias and stuff going on. And so I was like, oh my God, that sounds horrible. That sounds unhealthy is what I thought. And I think that I thought that health at every size meant healthy at every size. And that's a common misconception. And health at every size really is not saying that everyone is healthy at every size, because that's just not true. There can be people who can be unhealthy when they're quote, quote, thin, when they're in quote, quote, normal sized bodies, I'm using quotes because I don't like these categories, but if they're quote, quote, overweight or quote, quote, obese, a person can be healthy or unhealthy. Body size really doesn't determine a person's health. But I didn't realize that at all. And I had a lot of my own, again, weight sigma and things like that. So I thought it sounded crazy in the beginning. And then as I really started to go along my own recovery journey, started looking more into health at every size. I read Lindo Bacon's book, Health at Every Size and Body Respect. And I was like, okay, I get this. I get that, people, of all different bodies deserve great healthcare, and that body diversity is a very real thing. And that, asking people to lose weight when we don't really have any solid interventions to help people lose weight and keep it off, that's not ethical. So I definitely had a journey of totally revolting against health at every size to embracing more of it and seeing it as a really valuable framework.
Thank you for sharing that. I too had a similar experience again, but now really fully embrace this idea that we can't combat our genetic makeup, right? We can't fully depict how we show up in the world. And for that reason, embracing body diversity actually helps us accept our bodies more and heal our relationship with food at the same time. If you were to give a sparknotes definition of what health at every size is for the listeners, what would it be? Three or four main points of what the framework of health at every size really is, so they can get a deeper understanding of what this movement is really about. Because I also consider it a movement, right? It's it's a philosophy, it's a movement. It's a lot. It holds a lot of weight in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, health at every size honors differences in size, age, race, ethnicity, gender, disability, sexual orientation, religion, class, all of those things. So it's really about body respect. And then it also has, an area where there's critical awareness. So we challenge cultural assumptions about body and scientific assumptions, because there's a lot of people in the medical community that that are very weight centric, and that don't have some of these beliefs, and also valuing body knowledge and lived experiences. So, to go off to share a little bit about that, I think, when I was struggling with some disordered eating, I went to a couple of doctors and a dietitian, and I had shared, what I would consider if I had a client like that in my office, I would be like, yep, you have an eating disorder. We need to get you help. But I wasn't underweight. And so I think that, that really delayed my care. And so in that situation, those practitioners were not valuing my body knowledge and lived experience. And I think that's hard, but, something that we're striving for with health at every size. And then also think, finding joyful movement, eating in a way that's flexible and attuned and intuitive and takes in account all different factors, social factors, socioeconomic factors, access, all of those things It's kind of how I would sum it up in a nutshell.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it is truly an amazing movement. And for us, like for the mainstream, we don't see a lot of body diversity when we look at the media, social media, magazines. Like diet culture is not necessarily body diverse, right? It doesn't promote a message of health at every size. It promotes the message of the body ideal. And so here's where we like see into both of these worlds, right? On one hand, so many of us are striving for that ideal of thinness promoted by diet culture. We believe that if we get to a smaller body size, we'll be perceived as healthier, where then health at every size says, actually, even when we're at a smaller body, that doesn't guarantee health. Or if you're at a larger body, that doesn't guarantee health either, because size isn't the indicator of health. It's actually all of these other things that you've mentioned. It's actually way bigger than that. It's how attuned you are to your body, how knowledgeable you are of your body, how your access to food, the care that you receive. It's way bigger than your size. And actually, as you're saying, it's like, what if we questioned and challenged all of the research that really makes a weight-centric approach the mainstream today? What if we challenge that so we could get people better care? All of these things, it just resonates so deeply with me. I just so agree. What do you feel like for the person right now who's feeling like they've constantly been on this wheel of like trying to get into a smaller body and they haven't yet had this idea or haven't been inspired really to think about accepting their body as it is? How could they embrace or begin to look into a health at every size approach?
Yeah. So I would say, for a lot of people, their body image and their pursuit of health can become intertwined. So it's like, I want to be healthy, and that's fine. But then if I share information about, actually you can pursue health at any body size, and that's, health at every size, no matter what size you are, you can pursue healthy behavior change. And then it's like, oh, well, I think I just want to lose weight anyways. And so, there's two different things. There's a weight-centric, medical system. And then there's also the diet culture, the fat phobia, the anti-fatness that we see in our world, the thin ideal that's like, if you are not this size, you are not lovable, you will not be successful, you don't XYZ, and you might not be healthy either. So there's so many different pieces to that. And so I really encourage people who are kind of on this journey. I think it's so great working with a registered dietitian who is skilled in this area and a therapist, because, there's just so many different pieces and it's complex. I'll share a lot about some of the health piece and how we can work on all these things without focusing on weight. And of course, there's some resistance there a lot of times. It's really complex. And it's going to take time. Like I said, I was like, no, that's not for me. That's crazy. I'm not doing that at first. And then when I really read more of the research and, listened to some, really wise professionals in this area, I was able to be like, oh, okay, maybe, and then here I am now. So it's a journey. You don't have to fully accept everything that I'm saying right now. I hope you don't. I hope you do some of your own research.
I love that. Yes. And as I shared, I kind of felt the same way. It almost was like I had to confront my own weight bias, my own weight stigma, my own disordered eating, my own stuff before I was able to like look into this health at every size and be like, oh, dang it. This was the thing that we've been missing, It was like, then I finally felt open to that. And when I talk with other people, they might say like, oh no, of course, that could work for somebody else. It just wouldn't work for me. For me, I have to lose weight. I'll feel more healthier once I lose weight, or I'll do the thing once I lose the weight first. Maybe that would work for other people, but that wouldn't work for me. What do you say to somebody who kind of like has that mentality right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's worth exploring, why are you the exception in the human race? But also I think I think just exploring, like, what are you missing out on right now by doing all of this? What is your quality of life? If we're really striving to get to XYZ weight and we're not there, how is that impacting you, and what's going on? And I really like to go back to, body image isn't healed by losing weight. Absolutely, when people lose weight, it is reinforced by our culture and compliments and things like that. And that can be so tough. But it doesn't heal negative body image, and it doesn't make all your problems go away. And yeah, it doesn't do what it promises that it will. And I think sometimes people have to experience that before they're ready. Like, I have a lot of clients who come to me and they're like, okay, I've lost weight and regained it back and lost weight and regained it back, and I'm ready. I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, people have to get to that point on their own, before they're ready to start digging into some of the deeper work.
Yeah, I think that there's like this point of readiness that we have to kind of reach before we're able to kind of embrace the message. But I love that you brought up body image. Do you feel like someone can embrace health at every size while healing their own their image of themselves and their body and their relationship with their body? Do you feel like the both kind of run hand in hand?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think they go together beautifully, because health at every size, okay, if they're seeing me, they likely want to work on some aspect of their health, nutrition wise or movement or whatever. So we can work on those things, while also trying to practice being kind to our body and taking care of our body and respecting our body, even if we don't love it. It's really hard to have a good relationship with something if we aren't treating it well. And so we'll even just start there. Like, what would it be like to have these thoughts about your body image or about your body, and still choose to treat it with kindness and respect, as it deserves? And there's a lot of different things, that I'll do with clients in terms of body image, or that they'll work on with their therapist. But the reality is that, our relationship with our bodies, that's the longest relationship that we will have on this earth, period. And so fighting against our bodies, sometimes we have painful experiences in our bodies, and oh my gosh, that's so hard. And I hate that. I hate that pain is a part of this world. But a lot of the suffering and distress comes in when we're, resisting that and doing everything we can to fight against accepting kind of reality and what is.
I love how you said our relationship with our bodies is the longest relationship that we'll have on this planet. And the reason I love that is because it makes it seem so like we've inherited these bodies, and they are like the vessel for us, like our soul. Like, there's some like deeper, like, this could get spiritual, this could get all the things, right? But like, it's like we haven't chosen our bodies. This is something that we've been given, that we have the duty in many ways to respect, which is so hard in the culture and the society that we live in if our body isn't exactly the accepted ideal from diet culture. But I feel like this movement of health at every size, as it grows, and I don't know if you agree, that it is growing. The momentum for this health at every size work, it is so exciting. And I feel like the ideal at some point is going to be us as we are in these bodies that we have, celebrating body diversity. Do you see that as well? Do you see health at every size becoming more mainstream? The more we talk about it, the more we confront our own weight bias, our own weight stigma, our own disordered relationships with food in our body.
Yeah. I feel like it is growing, a lot, and people are tired of feeling like crap. We have one life again on this earth, and it's like, okay, do I want to keep doing this and living this way? I think in order for it to become like mainstream, like everyone in the world is on board, there's just a lot of work to do with, fat phobia and all of that stuff. And I think I've seen so much progress overall in this movement. And then like I'll run into someone who's like totally like not into it at all. And it just reminds me like, man, not everyone, believes this. And that can be really hard.
It can be really hard. Emily, it reminds me like, I have conversations like this with you and everybody else at the kitchen table with us. And I'm just like, oh, this is happening. This is so awesome. Like we're all like accepting our bodies now. And then it's like, dang it, I have a conversation with my mom or like,
Yeah.
or then I see it like in other places. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? There is still so much work we can do. What can we do today to help this movement, to help this work, to help us promote and share messages of acceptance for the bodies that we've inherited, that we have right now, and to celebrate body diversity, and to really start to live out this idea that health behaviors are possible for anybody at any size?
Yeah. I think that is a great question. And one study that I really, really like, and I share with anyone and everyone that I can. It's a little bit older. It's they did it in 2012, but so it's called Healthy Lifestyle Habits and Mortality in quote, quote, overweight and quote, quote, obese individuals. So I don't like that terminology. I think it's very normal to be in body sizes like that. But for research purposes, sometimes they use those terms. But I really like this study because what they did is they compared individuals of 3 different kind of BMI categories. So trigger warning, if you don't like BMI categories, then just don't listen to this. So they compared like the normal BMI range of the 18 point whatever to the 24, an overweight BMI range, and then an obese. And so they compared those 3 BMI ranges together. So they compared those ranges and applied healthy lifestyle interventions to each of those people. Mm-hmm. So the lifestyle interventions that they measured were fruit and vegetable intake. So getting 4 or 5 fruits and vegetables a day. So not 4 or 5 each, just 4 or 5 total. They measured tobacco use, alcohol use, and then movement of any kind for 30 minutes 3 times a week. So they didn't tease out like the difference between a gardener or a marathon runner. They just measured like movement in general. And so what they found, if a person had none of those healthy lifestyle factors for them going. So let's say they didn't eat 4 to 5 fruits or vegetables most days. They were smoking, they were drinking more than kind of the recommended amount, and they didn't get some sort of movement 3 times a week for about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those individuals, if you were in kind of a higher, BMI category, you did have a higher risk of all-cause mortality. You had a higher risk. But what's interesting is when you start adding just one of those factors, like I'm just going to cut out smoking, which a lot of people just naturally don't do. It just totally like slices that risk like in half. And then let's say you cut down the drinking to just a moderate amount. It's not like you have to stop drinking alcohol, but just, an appropriate amount. And then you add in some movement, and then you add in some fruits and vegetables. I'm not kidding you. By the time you have 4 of those factors, the risk factors for early death or premature death are almost exactly the same, regardless of BMI. And that's what the study really shows. It's like on this graph that I'm looking at, it's just amazing. It's like literally they're almost all in line, regardless of BMI. And so that's an example of how we can pursue healthy behavior change without having to focus on weight.
Thank you so much for sharing that study. Super profound and something that we don't talk about a lot. We want to go to the extremes with like juice cleanses and fasts and always a food approach, right? It's always so much about food, but what about beverages like alcohol? What about smoking? When we're talking about just like living a healthy life, sometimes I feel like those aren't talked about enough. What can we do like in the everyday? Gosh, we're talking about healthy behaviors. Let's talk about decreasing those, right? Or getting to a moderate level. And then from there, seeing how that affects our all-cause mortality, as you're saying. Well, now we have a baseline. So if we drink moderately, don't smoke, eat produce, and engage in some movement, we don't have to make this complicated. I love that. And it also shows, just as you're saying, that like no matter what our size, it's the same for all of us. Once we kind of like mitigate some of those other risk factors.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the diet industry is over $70 billion, and common sense nutrition doesn't sell. Everyone wants a quick fix. They want something that's big and bad and crazy and that's going to work, quote, quote. And, that stuff is just not sustainable and it doesn't work.
Common sense nutrition doesn't sell. Oh, you're so right. That's why new trends every year, new diets just keep coming on the scene. They got to keep it spicy. They got to keep it hot. No, what about simplifying that? What about getting down to the basics? And what about just treating our bodies with a little bit more respect?
Yeah.
Emily, as we wrap up our episode today, is there any like words of advice or inspiration or wisdom that you want to share with somebody who kind of struggles with treating their body with respect? And I know you and I both in our relationships with food and maybe our bodies in the past, we've struggled too. And so is there any advice that you would give to your prior self who had a poor relationship with food and body, or for a listener right now, that they could embrace to maybe, think about the idea of respecting their body just a little bit more today?
Yeah. I mean, for me, constantly fighting my body and my genetic makeup and my needs, that was exhausting. It was so exhausting. And if you are doing that and you're wondering why you're so tired, it's because what you're doing is exhausting. And I know it is so scary to try to do something different, or even to fathom not dieting or not trying to lose weight. That's so countercultural. But you can have those thoughts and those fears and still try to do something different. And you don't have to, change all in one moment. That's not going to happen. It's a journey. But trying to do little things, when you feel hungry, can you respond to that in the same way that if you had to pee, would you go to the bathroom? Things like that, where you can really just start to rebuild some of that body trust and get back on the same team with your body is just a great place to start.
Yeah. Sometimes I, avoid even going to the bathroom, Emily. I'm guilty of this too. Like I have to be, nope, 5 more minutes. I'm just going to finish this thing. I think we've all been there.
Yes.
I'm just going to finish this thing. No, go to the bathroom. No, eat something, get some sleep. And I know what you're saying too, of just feeling so fatigued and tired by constantly resisting our body instead of working with our bodies. We're working against our bodies. And I think that there's ease and simplicity once we surrender to the fact that our bodies are here for us. So thank you so much for sharing that. Emily, where can people follow you? Where can they find you? Where can they potentially work with you if you're onboarding new clients right now? I know that there are people listening that are just like, oh, we need more of Emily.
So sweet. So my Instagram is at Murray Nutrition, MURRAY, and then nutrition. My website is murraynutritionco.com because Murray Nutrition was taken. And those are the main 2 places that you can find me, is through Instagram and my website. And any potential new clients can go through those 2 avenues.
Fantastic. Marie, thank you so much, Emily, for being here on the show today and for your wisdom and all your sharing on Health at Every Size. Truly inspired by you and your work. And thanks again for all your sharing today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Talk soon.